Hello everybody, this is Lord Warland. I'm here today to talk to you about getting started in Elanthia in Gemstone 4. Now there is an initial quest line with pixies that will help introduce you to the basic mechanics of movement, speaking, interacting with PCs, NPCs, and have you tour the town and get a good view around the environments that you're in and give you a flavor for what the commands are and how to get started. However, when the Pixie quest line is complete, it kind of just dumps you off and says that you're left to your own devices. Now, this can be rather daunting. I've used the analogy in the past of it's like being dropped into the middle of the ocean and told that somewhere out there's some land with a massive party going on. Good luck. So what I'd like to do is supplement that Pixie quest with a little more information and to teach you some tips and tricks and where to go to get support for this game. It truly is an enjoyable game, and there's a great community that helps drive this game forward. And once you can get into it, it's amazing and you'll never want to put it down. It's really just that learning curve that we're here to overcome. So what you're seeing on the screen now is the web front end, which is probably your first experience with the game. I'm going to go over some of the basic aspects of this front end and also kind of explain the alternatives that are available to you. You have over here your initial command bar. This is where you're going to be typing in all of your commands. Below there, you can see a bunch of role-playing actions, kind of sub-menu options that you can utilize so that if you don't want to type look, you can click look. Now, it seems mundane, it doesn't seem too important, but it can be a nice feature. If you're interacting with objects, you can get an idea of what the various commands are. And for a new player, you probably don't have a good idea that there's more than just looking on the bench. You can look under the bench, you can look behind it, you can take a look at it directly, inspect, appraise, etc. There's a lot of opportunities available to you, and this will help get you more familiar with the verbs that you can utilize against the various objects and to interact with the environment. You have a variety of role plays and other actions. Again, it's really just a menu-driven way so that you might not have ever played a MUD before. You might not know that you can snicker, grin, laugh, chuckle, chortle. There's just so many options, so many verbs available out there. Could be an entire other video just to, well, read through the list, which sounds like a miserable video. Down here you have your health, your mana, your spirit, your stamina, and then the concept of your mind bar. So this represents your field experience. Unlike something like Dungeons & Dragons or a conventional MMO, you don't gain experience instantaneously. As you kill creatures, the experience first goes into your mind, which has its own capacity. And then as you rest and as more time elapses, every minute or so, you're going to absorb some of that experience out of your mind and into your actual learned experience pool. So this acts as a buffering system to make sure that you're not just hunting 24/7, fighting things, killing things. It helps break up the monotony. To the right over here is the directions that you have available to you. They are also clickable, as you can see from being able to click on that. And this will represent or reflect the obvious paths and obvious exits that you see. Obvious paths are when you're outdoors, obvious exits are when you're indoors. Little nuanced thing that they never actually mention anywhere. In addition, you can see any spell that you have prepared, anything in your hands, as well as any status ailments. Over to the right, we have your overall character status, which will show wounds. We have your spell listing, your inventory, and then a settings area, which is used to create new macros, which you can assign to keys down in the bottom left. Now, all of this being said, this is likely your first experience with Gemstone, and it's not that bad, but there's a lot of information that's not on this page, and there's stronger opportunities available to you. And what I'd like to do is to take a look at your initial entry into the game. So once you've actually logged out and logged back in, what you see is your character to play option, and then your connection method as option 2. So you have a couple different front ends available to you, Stormfront, the Wizard front end, and Java, which is an old legacy front end that I'm not going to discuss today. Starting at the bottom, the Wizard front end was created probably back in the mid-90s. It's a relatively thin client. It doesn't offer too much dynamic formatting, etc., but it's also an incredibly thin client from a CPU utilization perspective. Stormfront is incredibly robust, has a lot of those point-and-click options. It's a much more updated front end for an end-user experience. Clicking on the download function, you'll have to download the Simutronics game launcher, and what that will do is when you actually click on Go Play, what it's doing is it's downloading a .sal file, which is interpreted by the Simutronics game launcher, and it will route it to either install or start up either the Stormfront or the Wizard front end. So I realized that it seems like malware. If you're just starting out this game, the last thing you want to do is start downloading sketchy things from a website that you know nothing about. But truth be told, this information or this website and these tools probably predate malware. It's so freaking old. That being said, so let's take a look at what Stormfront has to offer. And here I'm logged in with Whirlin, taking a look at the general interface. So if you don't have these tabs at the top, or even if you do, they are fully collapsible using these tiny arrows that you see, so you can maximize the story and whatever windows you decide to have there. This is fully customizable for whether or not you want to display your encumbrance level, your experience levels, your injuries, etc. by selecting these options over on the left. Each of these are options for various types of windows. The room window will always show what's in the room, so you don't need to do look. Inventory, straightforward. And you know what? Most of these are relatively straightforward, so I'm not going to read them to you. The only thing that's a little bit of a misnomer is the maps object. The maps are really emphasizing the town of Valor, and really don't have too many maps for the other towns available. And I realize when you're playing a text-based game, maps are pretty important. I'll get to that in a few moments. But some things that this front end has that the other front end does not, it still has the same look, roleplay, etc. options that we saw from the web front end. But it also has your stance information, which is a huge deficit of the web front end. Stances, which I believe is explained in the Pixie Quest when you fight the worm, it's how much you're dedicating yourself towards being defensive versus being offensive. So by typing something like stance offensive, I'm now dedicating all of my training towards attacking. So I'll see a substantial drop in my defensive strength, I'll see a massive increase in my offensive strength. There's equations and things on the wiki if you're more interested for how those are actually calculated, but needless to say, it's going to be a lot easier to hit things in offensive stance, and it's going to be a lot harder to get hit when you're in defensive stance. Additionally, having the heads-up display for your current experience, your current training points, as well as the link to actually adjusting your training and your skill goals, they're just really nice to haves, and it makes the experience a lot easier to manage all of the various data points that you might not be familiar with the commands enough to really know how to get to. So for a new player, I absolutely recommend downloading Stormfront and getting this up and running. This is probably going to make your end user experience a lot more straightforward, a lot easier to manage, and hopefully have you stick around this game a little longer. Now, I mentioned that I was going to talk about this subject a little while later, but one other big problem for a newcomer is navigating this place. Ice Mule Trace Town Center. How do I get anywhere from here? Fortunately, on the main site, there is a link to the Gemstone wiki, and unlike 99% of wiki sites, this one is actually incredibly well laid out and probably the best game-related, game-owned wiki site that I've ever seen. But let's actually just search for Ice Mule. Ice Mule area maps. Okay, that's exactly what we want. Here's a map of the town of Icemule itself. So we knew that we were in town center. This is everything that we can want to see. And we can zoom in to make it actually readable. So that is all well and good. So we now know how to properly play the game. We know a good source for maps and references, but we never kind of said what to do next. The next thing that you can really do, besides obviously role-playing with others, is you can begin hunting. So, like fighting that carrion worm in the Pixie Quest, we can look for areas where there might be level 1 creatures that you can fight. Around the Icemule area, that would be the Icemule Underground. We have carrion worms and giant rats here in the underground. If we go back to this map listing, we can also take a look at the south gates. There's kobolds and roltons and rabid squirrels right outside the south gate. Sorry, I realize that might not have been readable. So this connects to the south gate, this connects to the west gate, and we can hop back and forth between those two maps to determine how to get there. And that's the basic idea of what you should be doing after you've completed the Pixie Quests and really started to get your feet wet in the game of Gemstone. You can start hunting, you can start talking to these other new players that are just entering the game. In addition, should you need any help, we have set up as a community a Discord channel, which I've linked in the description below. There's also the Players Corner forums, which they're online forums, so you end up getting a lot of trolls over there as well. Decent quality. Stick to the Gemstone related forums, avoid the politics ones like the plague, unless that's something you're interested in, but it's terrible. And that should be a good introduction to get you started. Now, one thing that I would also like to touch upon that is also available is the add-on of Lich. So Lich is a standalone program that runs on top of the front ends. And what this does is this adds a Ruby backend application that integrates into the web front ends. What this allows you to do is have additional scripts available to you, and there's a lot more player-run content that can reduce some of the monotony of some of the aspects of Gemstone. Pardon that misnomer. Here we have the wizard front end. I was having a little bit of difficulty with Stormfront because I don't typically use that front end. I am incredibly old school and use a wizard front end. Here it is. It has most of the other things that we had discussed, but it's a little more menu driven. I won't go into the specifics of this because I think that Stormfront is better suited for new players. But what Lich does is it adds in a couple additional features with that Ruby-based backend addition. One very obvious change is this integration of Narist. Narist is actually the name of our most historic mapping character to Soren, but backwards. And what Narist does is it pulls up these maps as well as will pull open a red circle that reflects where you are that will move with you. It'll move the entire map and help you navigate the various towns, the various wilds a lot faster, a lot easier. In addition to the map being completely draggable, you can also interact with it simply by clicking. And that will execute another command that will move you to the room that you just clicked on. Makes movement and makes that task of moving from one side of town to the other a lot easier. In addition, there are communication channels that exist that are isolated onto the Lich servers. The best way to think about this is a little bit of a historical approach. Back when we all started playing Gemstone, back in the AOL days of late 80s, early 90s, people used to open up an additional chat room where they would communicate out of character and discuss the game and discuss merchanting, communicating, asking for help, etc., just in a chat room. And this really kind of adds that functionality into the front end, so it reduces the need for an additional Slack, Discord, other venue of communication that you would need to add on to your game browser. This adds all of those additional chat rooms organized right there. So you can see that Decades right now is soliciting this on Merchant. There's also going to be communications on a Prime channel, an Elnet channel. There's a lot of them available out there. You can browse them at your leisure. However, it should also be noted that Lich, as a additional interface, also does break your immersion into the game a little bit, because it does automate some of those aspects that are probably best suited to learn first. I would invite individuals to get to level 5 or so before really trying to install Lich and utilizing some of this automation and ease of use. It's worth learning it on your own before you completely become dependent on a third-party application to handle that for you. However, I will put a link in the description below. I'll make it easy for people to get their hands on it should they need to. For this video, that was really all I wanted to cover. I'd like to thank you all for your interest in Gemstone. Please feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached via Players Corner forums, reached through Lich, reached through the Discord chat below. I'm more than happy to help out any way I can or answer any questions that you have, and I look forward to seeing you in the game. Thank you.